Thank you. Let's get to my first slide. Oh. There we go. That is my great-grandfather, Isidore Slamowitz, and he was an entrepreneur. He was born in Radom, Poland. In 1913, he left Radom for New York, and he set up a shoe rebuilding store. Unfortunately, my grandfather, Samuel, didn't make it over in 1913, had to wait out World War I, and in the summer after World War I, in 1919, my grandfather, Samuel, was 13 years old, and he walked from Radom to Calais in the summer of 1919, and then emigrated to New York to join his father, Isidore. And I tell this story for two reasons. One, this is the first time in 98 years since somebody from my family has returned to Poland, and it has been a very warm and welcoming return. But I also tell it to you because I come from a long line of small entrepreneurs. And I went to law school because my mother told me to go to law school. You can't practice law because your mother tells you to practice law. And after 2 years of practicing law, I decided to quit my law job in New York City and start a company. I was not trained as an entrepreneur, and I'm going to walk you through some of the lessons that I learned as an entrepreneur. And the overriding concept is that I very quickly learned that micromanagement and brute force is a strategy that just doesn't work. Micromanagement and brute force are simply horrible tactics. You will not achieve anything big, you will not achieve anything great if your approach is micromanagement and brute force. So, to build a team, well, let me back up. If your goal is a goal that can be achieved through brute force and micromanagement, your goal is simply not big enough. You need a goal in life, you need a goal in business that is so big that you can't get there alone. You need a goal that you need a team effort to achieve. So one of the lessons, the first lesson that I learned is you need a disciplined meeting rhythm. You need daily huddles, weekly meetings, monthly meetings, and quarterlies. These meetings belong to the team, they belong to the organization, they don't belong to any one person. The purpose of this disciplined meeting rhythm is communication. You need communication to be constantly flowing through your team. You need communication to be constantly flowing through your organization. One of your goals as a leader should be that everybody on your team knows as much or more than you. How can you expect people to get out on the court and play an awesome game of football unless they're in the know? And it's a disciplined meeting rhythm that must start from the beginning and stay with your team and stay with your organization as you grow. And again, it becomes the central nervous system of your team, it becomes the central nervous system of your organization, and it's just imperative that there's constant communication flowing through your organization. It's unacceptable that anybody toils alone in the corner in the dark. You must demand and expect transparency from every single player on your team. And the way you achieve transparency is through a very disciplined meeting rhythm. The second lesson that I learned is that you have to embrace change, innovation, and experimentation. And what the concept here is that it's not enough that everybody simply brings the left side of their brain to work every day. You must create an environment where people are bringing the right side of their brain to work every day, the creative side. You need everybody bringing their whole brain, the left and right side, the logical and the creative side of their mind to work. And the only way you could do that is if you have a culture that encourages and allows for experimentation. Failure, if you do not have failure organizationally, you are not trying hard enough. You cannot have an organization where people are afraid of failing. You cannot have a culture or an environment where people are ostracized, shunned, or put down because they failed. The Israelis really know a lot about failure, and there are some great books written about the Israeli business culture's embracement of failure. You have to celebrate failure. And that has to be part of your team's culture and your organization's culture. What I call your constitutional framework. If you're not going to micromanage people, they have to understand the rules of the game. You have to define your organization's core values. These are the boundaries. Tactically, I'm not going to micromanage you. But tactically, your actions and your behaviors must stay within the confines of our core values. You must play the great game of business on the field. And you cannot have any tolerance for anyone who behaves outside of your core values. Your best salesperson is constantly behaving outside of your core values. Your best technologist is constantly behaving outside of your core values. Those people must be discharged from your company immediately. You live and die by your core values. I'm going to talk a little bit more about big, hairy, audacious goal. This is a Jim Collins concept. You need to have a big, hairy, audacious goal. Every single person in your company has to know what your big, hairy, audacious goal is. I'm going to tell a quick story that I told to Peter off stage. In the 1960s, President Kennedy gave the United States a big, hairy, audacious goal. And that goal was to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade.
It's good that you are earlier.
And he said, not only do we have to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, but we have to beat the Russians. And the whole country was focused every day on that mission to put a man on the moon. And there's this great story In 1962, they were finishing building mission control for the space program in Houston, Texas. And President
Perfect.
Kennedy
And
went
I'm next,
down
right?
to mission control
On the table, it will be the slide switch,
to tour the facility.
remote control.
And the
Okay.
president
You can
and his
take it from there and
entourage
start the
were going down the
Okay. Hi
hallway.
Peter, how are you?
And there was
And
a
I can see
janitor.
I can see my slides on the.
And the janitor got
That
out of the
screen is
way
To previews, yes.
This one and that
and
one.
stood
Okay.
against the wall to let the
In corner, you can
president
see
and his
there's the timer
entourage
you
pass.
have left, yes.
And the
Okay,
president,
on both
President
screens.
Kennedy stopped and turned to the
Go for it.
janitor and
Thanks a
said,
lot.
"Sir, what do you do here at Mission
life?
Control?"
Ah, ik kan het Nederlands
And
praten.
the janitor
Dat is alweer.
was totally
Goh, ik had de eerste bus
confused
gemist.
by the question.
1 minuut.
And the janitor turned to the president and said, "Mr. President, my job here at Mission Control is to put a man on the
Zo'n
moon."
10, 15.
And that
Well, that is-
is the right answer. And as a leader,
Nog even kijken.
building a team, building a company, one of your jobs
Oh, seasoned, maar mag je weglaten.
is to give
European Technology Journal is finding it with TQ.
that same experience to every
Ik zal wel
single
een beetje uitleggen
person
wat
at
dat
your
interview is, dus
company.
mag het daarbij houden.
They need to believe and understand your big, hairy, audacious goal. One of your jobs as a leader is
Ja,
for
dat is al
every
4 jaar
single
geleden.
person to come to work
Maar ik zal wel even
every
vermelden, dus,
single day feeling that what they
Ja, je mag
do
het zeggen, hè.
is moving your company towards your big, hairy, audacious goal.
Oké, ga even een presentatie bekijken.
Key performance indicators, metrics. If you're not going to micromanage people, you need to teach people how to manage themselves. Are their tactics working? Are they not working? Can they improve their tactical actions? Are their tactical actions moving the company towards its goals? Metrics, metric literacy. You have to become a metric literate culture, a metric literate organization. You have to teach people how to measure their tactical actions. It's a game. It's the great game of business. Are we winning? Are we losing? How do we know if we're winning or losing unless we're measuring? Everybody, not just senior management, has to become very comfortable
You know
with
that the Wi-Fi
metrics.
network.
Every single person in your company should have 1, 2, or 3
find it.
metrics
That's
that
what I
they
was
live
looking for.
by. Clearly defined, measurable, annual, and quarterly
It's open?
goals. I recommend this to every company
Great, thanks.
from the beginning. Every single person in your company has to know your top 3 goals for the year. And those 3 goals need to be objectively measurable. Again, what's the purpose of our tactical actions? What are we trying to achieve? Everybody needs to know what you're trying to achieve, and everybody needs to know if you're winning and losing. Remember, a company with too many priorities has no priorities. You define yourself not simply by saying yes, you also define yourself by saying no. You have to agree as to what you're going to spend your time on. And all tactical actions, everybody should come to work every day, and their tactical actions should be aligned with your company quarterly and annual goals. And again, this is a necessary component to get out of the game of micromanaging. Your culture. For me, As you start to build your company and your company starts to grow, your culture is one of your most important assets. If you ignore your culture, if you don't put intentional thought and design into your company culture, it's going to be ugly. There's a great book that I read as a child in grade school, maybe in junior high, called The Lord of the Flies. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. And it's a commentary on human nature. And if you don't intentionally focus and positively build your culture, it will go to the dark side. And I'm pretty certain that everybody here has worked in a company that had a toxic culture. You are not going to do great things. You are not going to have fun. You're not going to build a great company. You're not going to attract and retain great people unless you have an awesome culture. You need an awesome culture, not simply to be competitive, but you need an awesome culture to get the best out of all of your employees on your journey towards your BHAG. Too many companies ignore their culture. It needs to be one of your top priorities. This is something that I have to tell entrepreneurs over and over again. You are not the smartest person in the room. First, if you are the smartest person in the room, you have a problem. You're not attracting the best and the brightest. And even if you are attracting the best and the brightest, you're not getting the best out of them. And this is really hard for a lot of entrepreneurs. And what I'm talking about is a paradigm shift.
Excuse me.
Entrepreneurs,
Do you have my presentation in your
you
computer?
must come to, or leaders in general,
Can I go
you
check
must
real
come
quick
to the
which version they
general
have?
realization
Sorry.
that it's not about you. It's about everybody else around you. And you will learn a lot more and do greater things if you listen and you focus on delivering an awesome experience to everybody around you. Think of yourself as a coach. Entrepreneurs can't be hogging the ball. In fact, it's not only about the entrepreneur passing the ball, it's really about, ultimately, the entrepreneur getting off the field. As an entrepreneur, one of your goals should be to get off the field as quickly as possible. And your goal shouldn't be about you. It needs to be about everybody else on your team getting out on the field, playing the best possible game they could play. Again, as an entrepreneur, to build something big, to build something great, it must not and it cannot be about you. It has to be about what can you do each and every day to get the people around you out on the field playing the best possible game. Here's something else that I learned. And you hear some entrepreneurs say, well, your employees first. Some people say, well, customers first. And I've given it a lot of thought. And I'm going to tell you what I think. For leaders, employees first. You're a coach. You're a mentor. As a leader, your focus needs to be getting the best players and getting them to achieve, giving them the tools, the confidence to play a great game. Your employees, their job is to focus on, listen to, and understand your customers. This is a Jim Collins
Version
concept.
4.
I only sent 2.
Okay.
As a leader,
Can I check?
you can't be focused on tactics. You can't be kicking the ball.
V4.
No, it's not mine.
Okay.
If you are out on the court playing the game of business yourself every single day, you will not have time to do these things that I'm talking about this morning. You will not have time to focus on recruiting the best possible players you can. You won't have the time to focus on getting these players into the right position. You may hire a great person, and you may not put them into the right position at first. And that's okay. But you need to be watching the game of business, not playing it. And so you can see that this great player is just not in the right position. And you need to be constantly focusing on your players. Do they have the right tools to play this great game of business? Are they in the right position? Having frank conversations with your players, constantly moving your players around, or being open to moving your players around. We've had situations where we have hired people who have been an unbelievable cultural fit with our company. They have been perfect examples of our core values. But for one reason or another, they're not in the right position. You don't want that person to leave. You don't want to fire that person. That person is a gem. And you need to put the time and energy into working with that person and finding the right spot on the field for them. The last point, and really the greatest lesson that I learned in business, is employee self-actualization. And this is a concept that I got from Professor Maslow, the human hierarchy of needs. And the top of Maslow's pyramid is self-actualization. And what does that mean? That means, as a human being, I have meaning to my life. I come to work every single day feeling important. I come to work every single day with purpose and meaning. And that is what that janitor had. That janitor who ran into President Kennedy in the hall in Mission Control in 1962 in Houston. That janitor came to work every single day with meaning and purpose. That janitor got to the top of Maslow's pyramid, self-actualizing. That janitor felt really good about himself. And I tell people, I tell entrepreneurs, I tell team leaders, that is your biggest goal every single day coming to work as a leader. Your job is to make sure that every single person in your team, every single person in your company who comes to work every single day is getting to the top of Professor Maslow's pyramid. That they're coming to work every day with meaning and purpose. And when you can deliver that experience to people, getting them out on the field, playing a great game, wanting to wake up every morning and just can't wait to get to work. When they feel, when your receptionist feels that he or she is making a difference in moving your company towards its big, hairy, audacious goal, a couple of things happen. One, you have a very high chance of achieving your goals. But I think more importantly, you and everybody on your team are going to have a lot of fun and a really good feeling about what you're doing. And I'm going to end with this. I tell leaders and entrepreneurs, it's really simply not about your business and your team and your company. You have a social obligation. You have a social obligation to everybody on your team. You have a social obligation to everybody in your company to get them to the top of Maslow's pyramid. You have a social obligation as a leader to deliver an awesome experience to every single person who comes to work for you every day. I didn't learn any of this in law school. I learned this the hard way after I started my company. And once I figured this out, and I read a lot of books, and it took a couple of years of experimentation to figure this out, my company took off. We went to a whole new level, and business became a lot more fun for me. So this is what I've learned on my journey in business. I'm around for the next 2 days, giving a workshop tomorrow, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. Don't walk away, don't walk away, don't walk away. I couldn't get up this morning, but it doesn't mean that I don't like it here. That had to do with parties and dinners. You're right about flipping the pyramid, but you do not want to flip Maslow's pyramid, I guess?
No.
That's good to know, because I don't know why you are leaving, because we still have time for some questions. There are ladies in the room running around with microphones. So if you have a question, please raise your hand that they can come to you. And feel free to ask a question to Greg, otherwise I will come up with some nasty ones. Is there anybody in the room? Because I cannot see anything.
Yeah, we cannot see anything.
Raise your hand, please.
Oh, we got a question back here. We have a microphone for him.
Is there a microphone? Ladies? Otherwise, just come to me, because it looks like they are out of microphones. Or I will come to you, even better.
Many thanks. Great presentation, first of all. Thank you so much. Very much inspirational. 2 very short questions. Can you please remind what is the name of the book you recommended a few minutes ago? And the second, out of the 10 points, is there a key one? What is the most important one, in your opinion, if there is one? Thank you.
So I think you were talking about the book about the Israeli culture. It's called Startup Nation. It's a great book. If you go to my website, gregslamowitz.com, there's a reading list. I read probably about 300 business books. The truth is they all say the same thing. And so that gets me to your second question. What's the most important? Most important is my first point, is getting everybody to the top of Maslow's pyramid, is just delivering an awesome experience to everybody around you, obviously in a way that's aligned with your company's goals. But self-actualization is, I think, the most important lesson that I learned.
Going forward on that one, Greg, because of course, as an entrepreneur, as an organization, you can try to stimulate that. What does it demand from the employee? Because there you also need a change in the attitude.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so when we went on this journey, so the first 3 years of my company was command and control, and we conditioned some people into thinking like, okay, I'm just going to do what I'm told. And the vast majority of people hate that. And if you have any social intelligence and you're a command and control guy, if you're a command and control person and you have social intelligence, you know there's something wrong, okay? Because you're telling people what to do and they're just looking at you, you know, and they're not happy, and you know that. So you do a total 180-degree shift, and you go down this road, and so now you're demanding that people come to work every day and play and get out on the court, and it's not about doing what they're told, it's about coming up with solutions. Their full body, their full brain has to get into the job. You're demanding a lot more. Great question, Peter. You're demanding a lot more. And we found that a couple of people stood up and they said, this isn't for me. I just want to come to work every day, punch in, punch out, be told what to do. I don't want to think. So you're now demanding that people think. I believe 95% of the people out there want to come to work and think. They want to participate. There are some people that are going to say, no thank you, and I'm leaving. And that's the best thing that could happen to you. You want those people to leave. Hopefully you don't hire those people to begin with, but if you do, the people who don't want to get into the game and play a great game, you want them to leave. Great question, Peter. Thank you.
And I think you will face there quite a nice challenge tomorrow during your workshop, because we are still facing a low trust society here. I've learned from a famous Polish sociologist, and trust is one of the most important things to build such amazing organizations, of course. Greg, thank you very much
Okay.
for this insight.
Thank you, Peter.